All right, Professor Wyman here, and I'm going to continue the series on multiple linear regression, simultaneous multiple linear regression in APA style. So if you have not watched the previous videos, you might want to go back just for more context. But basically, the first thing we're going to do is report our overall model. So this is the APA format for the overall model. We're going to report our F test first. And so we would include F in italics. We have our degrees of freedom separated with a comma. We have our actual F value written next right here. And then we have P after a comma. P is going to be italicized. You either would say equals and then the actual number. No leading zero, so make sure that not leading zero because it can't be greater than one. If your p-value is really, really, really small, then you could put less than 0.001. But other than that, you typically want to write what the actual p-value is. Then you're going to report your adjusted R squared. And again, no leading zero. And again, the R squared is italicized. Now, if that is statistically significant, which ours was, then you would proceed to talk about the individual coefficients, so your unstandardized betas. And so you would say beta was this value, and then you're going to write out your results with the t statistics. So you'll use your t. Your degrees of freedom are going to be a little different. I don't know why, but Jamovi doesn't include degrees of freedom for you. And so you have to do a tiny bit of calculation. But the degrees of freedom is the sample size minus the number of predictors minus one. And then you would report your t statistic, a comma, and then your p. Both the t and p are italicized. And then report your p-value. And again, your p, if it's really, really small, less than 0.001. So for our results, that overall model is our first step. You can see that we're just taking that information and saying, okay, our degrees of freedom is 1, comma, 193. So F with 4 degrees of freedom, comma, 193 equals 31.99. So I'm just rounding correctly there. P is less than 0.001 because it is teeny tiny. Comma, adjusted R squared equals 0.39. So I'm using the adjusted R squared here, not the R squared. Not a huge difference there, but again, we just use that adjusted R squared so that we're not overinflating it. So now to write about this, there are different ways to write about this. This is not like the definitive way to write about it. This is just one way. You might work with a different instructor who maybe wants you to write it out a little bit differently, but this is the basic information and the format. So you want to start by talking about what type of test you conducted, just like with the other tests that we've learned. So start with the name. You could just say multiple regression. You could say simultaneous multiple regression, multiple linear regression was conducted. That's an ugly line. I'm going to delete that. Let's try again. Simultaneous multiple regression was conducted to predict Machiavellianism from agreeableness, neuroticism, and gender. So we're just saying, kind of restating again what the purpose was of the test. The overall model was significant. So this is where we have our overall model test. So this tells us that the overall model was significant. We have our p-value right here, indicating that the predictors explained 39% of the variance. That's coming from this number. So we're saying that 39% of the variance in Machiavellianism is explained statistically by our predictors. Agreeableness significantly predicted Machiavellianism. And then after a comma, I have the beta, unstandardized beta weight in italics is negative 1.35. T is of degrees of freedom of 193 equals negative 8.12, comma, P is less than 0.001 with lower agreeableness associated with higher Machiavellianism. So again, it's a negative. So we're talking about a negative relationship between those two variables. Then I just list the other ones. So neuroticism, also significantly predicted. I have its beta weight. I have the T statistic. And then again, lower neuroticism associated with higher Machiavellianism. Compared to males, females scored significantly lower on Machiavellianism. Same thing here. And then I did note that, however, those identifying as other gender did not significantly score significantly differently than males. And so I still reported that information. Now I'm saying see table 1. because that way you can include the details in the table. It just has a little bit more information there, so you can include your confidence intervals. You don't want to make your paragraph like too hard to read. You want to it's kind of just the facts, ma'am. Like you just want to share the important information. But then the table has additional information that people can go to. So in the next video, I will show how to create the table. I'm going to use Google Docs, how to create a table in APA style for this test. Um, and then that is it. That'll be the end of this series of videos on simultaneous multiple linear regression.